Summer 2024, and as Keir Starmer celebrated Labour's landslide election victory, in the Downing Street crowd stood the man considered pivotal to that success, Morgan McSweeney. The strategist who previously had led Keir Starmer's bid to become Labour leader, who'd become in Downing Street his chief of staff, but in recent months increasingly a lightning rod for growing party dissent amidst repeated policy U-turns. Calls had grown for McSweeney's dismissal over his role in Peter Mandelson's appointment as ambassador to the US, including this morning again from a senior party figure, Lord Blunkett. The cabinet minister, Pat McFadden, was asked if Morgan McSweeney should go.
I see no point in that whatsoever. In fact, I think if the Prime Minister stays there, I don't think that would make any difference at all. And to call for changes of staff, I've seen this before, I don't think it makes a difference.
But within hours, the position in Downing Street had changed, Morgan McSweeney issuing this statement. The decision to appoint Peter Mandelson was wrong, he said. He has damaged our party, our country and trust in politics itself. When asked, I advised the Prime Minister to make that appointment, and I take full responsibility for that advice. In public life, responsibility must be owned when it matters most, not just when it is most convenient. In the circumstances, the only honourable course is to step aside. He went on to say, I remain fully supportive of the Prime Minister. He is working every day to rebuild trust, restore standards and serve the country.
Before he was appointed ambassador, Mandelson was asked directly about the nature of his relationship with Epstein.
The Prime Minister, having spent a week consumed by the Epstein affair, begins another similarly. In a statement, he said it had been an honour working with Morgan McSweeney, the aide upon whom he'd leaned so much and publicly defended last Wednesday.
Does he have the same full confidence in Morgan McSweeney that he had in Peter Mandelson?
Prime Minister. Morgan McSweeney is an essential part of my team. He helped me change the Labour Party and win an election. Of course I have confidence in him.
Kemi Badenoch today said the Prime Minister himself should take responsibility. His position, one of her shadow cabinet said earlier, was no longer tenable.
It's starting to become a question of when and not if. And if it's going to be when, then the Labour Party should get on and sort it out quickly so that it doesn't create a distraction for months ahead.
It was a view echoed this morning by the head of a union affiliated to Labour.
Well, I think everybody's thinking it and people are just not saying it at the moment. Unfortunately, we're seeing MPs being wheeled out again today to sweep up the mess behind the Prime Minister at the moment. And it seems that the Prime Minister isn't taking advice from elected people within his own government.
As some Labour MPs rallied to the Prime Minister's defence, fresh questions arose around a reported 5-figure payoff deal for Peter Mandelson after being sacked as ambassador to Washington. The Foreign Office today said normal processes were followed in his dismissal and that a review has now been instigated in light of the latest revelations and criminal investigation. Peter Mandelson has not responded to requests for comment, but his position is understood to be that he's not acted in any way criminally. How much has changed since the moment the Starmers walked into Downing Street? A Prime Minister now bracing himself, no doubt, for whatever might come next in the Epstein affair. More in need now of political allies perhaps than ever before. And this time, without Morgan McSweeney, the aide for so long, so central to his career.
Andy Davis there. So what impact will this have on Sir Keir Starmer's political future? Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, is in Downing Street. Gary, did he jump or was he pushed?
When you hear on the ether that it was jointly decided it was the right time for the advisor to move on, that normally means they were pushed. You don't get the sense that this was a contact instigated by Morgan McSweeney. You get the impression that yet again, Keir Starmer, as he has done so often in the past, has made a ruthless sacrifice in order, he hopes, to hold on to his job.
Has Sir Keir saved his own bacon with this?
You wouldn't think so. look at the PLP, for instance, the Parliamentary Labour Party. Is this going to make them rally to Keir Starmer? Well, quite a lot of them are pretty confident he wouldn't know who they were if he met them in a corridor. Quite a lot of them do actually know Morgan McSweeney. Some of them, quite a few of them, don't like him. Quite a few of them do like him. But this doesn't increase the body of support for Keir Starmer. And there's a very interesting phenomenon going on when you talk to people on the soft left of the Parliamentary Labour Party at the moment. They're saying that they feel they just pulled a brick out of the wall of Keir Starmer's government with the removal of Morgan McSweeney. They feel that they're on a project, probably heading, in the hopes of many in that group, towards May, after the May local elections, when they think they'll have a candidate ready, maybe even an alliance ready, of plausible figures who could form a government succeeding Keir Starmer. So, yeah, you wouldn't say it looks as though it saved his bacon. It might have fitted into some people's strategies.
And how might this go down with the voters?
Well, I think to many voters this will look like the final series in the box set of the Tory years, particularly if you move to a coup attempt, if Keir Starmer has to stand down, you have a change of leader, more factionalism, everything that brings. It's worth remembering Morgan McSweeney, the central tenet of his beliefs and that fed into how he ran that general election campaign was that Labour must always be taken away from its comfort zone, pulled away from its attraction to causes that cost money, and that was its Achilles heel in the eyes of the voters. Morgan McSweeney, licking his wounds away from here tonight, will be looking at what he sees as the future destiny of his party and thinking they're falling into the trap I tried to take them away from.
Gary, thanks very much. Gary Gibbon there. Well, earlier I spoke to the Labour MP, Natalie Fleet, herself a victim of grooming and sexual abuse. I began by asking her whether McSweeney's resignation would be enough to save the Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister has my full support. This whole mess has been absolutely horrendous and detracted from all of the things that the Prime Minister has been determined to deliver for violence against women and girls. Morgan has said that he gave him advice and that advice was acted on, and he's taken responsibility. We're not going to stop talking about Peter Mandelson for a while.
But the truth is this entire mess, actually, in the end, surely rests entirely on the final judgment made by the Prime Minister, and he should take responsibility for that.
For me, this mess lies with Peter Mandelson. There were emails that he sent in the last government that he was friends with the paedophile after the paedophile had been convicted. That is absolutely outrageous. And then he lied, not just once, but repeatedly.
His connection, sorry to interrupt you, but his connection with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein was well known by the time he was appointed.
The political establishment were absolutely convinced by the lies that Mandelson told. We now know that was wrong. The appointment was wrong. It shouldn't have happened. It was damaging to us as a party. It was damaging to the country, but it was damaging to those victims.
But that connection was well known. That connection was known by the Prime Minister and others.
Jeffrey Epstein was connected to so many people in so many different ways. There are people across politics and celebrities that knew him. That doesn't mean that they knew what he was doing. And Peter Mandelson very successfully downplayed that connection.
But that speaks to exactly a problem for many of your own women Labour MPs and many victims and survivors. So tell me why their assessment is wrong. The Prime Minister made a political calculation, and in deciding that Peter Mandelson once again was indispensable to government, the victims, by definition, were not really considered, were they?
I put myself in the category of victim of a similar crime that was happening in this country at that time, the same time that Virginia Giuffre and all those other brave women were being trafficked, raped, exploited in America. Similar things were happening here in my community. As a victim, I have never known a Prime Minister that is so determined to tackle violence against women and girls.
And you don't think, as some of other Labour MPs think, Keir Starmer needs to do the honourable thing and take responsibility for making the final decision?
The honourable thing now is to show our demonstration to tackling violence against women and girls. We've done so much already. There's obviously so much further to go. I think the best person to be able to do that is Keir Starmer.
So there are some MPs who are saying in the last hour, this isn't enough, he needs to step down himself. Are you saying he should not step down now, that he will be in place in the coming years?
I come from the perspective of a victim. I want us to have the Prime Minister that is going to prioritise tackling violence against women and girls, and I can't see anybody else that has the same commitment to do that Keir Starmer does.
Does he have to do more to make up to the many victims of Jeffrey Epstein who will look at decisions that have been made and think, we are not at the heart of this, we have never been at the heart of this, politics has been at the heart of this?
So the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, any historical sexual crime, and the 200 women that will be raped in the UK today, I believe they're best served with Keir Starmer as Prime Minister, because this isn't just politics, this isn't just words, this is a real, genuine commitment to tackling violence against women and girls. I'd like to see him appoint the best team around him now that there's a vacancy. I'd like to see a woman in that post.
Natalie Fleet, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
Well, the writer and broadcaster Sonia Soda was a senior advisor to Ed Miliband when he was leader of the opposition, and she joins me now. Natalie Fleet there, a Labour MP, says as a survivor of abuse herself, she wants Keir Starmer to stay. Are there enough others who agree, do you think?
Well, I think if you speak to Labour MPs off the record, behind the scenes, there's huge anger at Keir Starmer and the judgment call that he made to appoint Peter Mandelson. And that's not something that Morgan McSweeney going will completely dissipate. It might buy Keir Starmer a bit of time, perhaps, on the backbenchers, but the fundamentals haven't changed, and it comes back down to the fact that, yes, Morgan McSweeney has said he gave Keir Starmer this advice to appoint Peter Mandelson. He takes responsibility for it. But at the end of the day, it is the decision of the Prime Minister. It's a Prime Minister who makes a decision. I think a lot of MPs watch Keir Starmer make speeches, answer Prime Minister's questions last week saying, I'm just as angry as the rest of you, I've been lied to too, sort of portraying himself as a victim. And it didn't really wash with the backbenchers. And I'm afraid I just don't think that Morgan McSweeney's resignation changes that.
And in some ways, it seems to have actually added pressure in the last couple of hours. Obviously, you know, the opposition parties have been piling in, but Labour MPs too, making exactly that point that the buck has to stop with Keir Starmer.
Yeah, and I think it's a reasonable perspective. The buck does stop with the Prime Minister. I think there was a lot riding on how the Prime Minister decided to respond to these revelations that came out. He says he was lied to. He says he didn't know. But the fact of the matter is that thanks to the reporting of the Financial Times, we do know that it was in the public domain. We know it was in intelligence that went to Number 10, that there was a JP Morgan due diligence report that Number 10 were aware of that established that there was a close personal friendship between Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein. So that is something that it's very hard to toss aside. And, you know, I take really seriously what Natalie Fleet was saying. She's a victim of sexual violence herself. She says she trusts the Prime Minister. But I also think there are lots of people who are victims who don't necessarily trust the Prime Minister. He did choose to elevate his former comms advisor to the House of Lords, even though that advisor went and campaigned for somebody who had been charged with serious child sex offences, later was convicted. That person still got into House of Lords. Obviously not the person who's been charged with those offences, but somebody who went and campaigned for them, Matthew Doyle. He said he wasn't, you know, that his friend was protesting his innocence at the time, but it was somebody who was charged. I think that shows really questionable judgment around.
Very briefly, I mean, obviously, Sonia, we don't have Matthew Doyle here to speak for himself, but really critically, the loss of Morgan McSweeney, which is clearly huge to Sir Keir Starmer, if there are any more revelations in the paperwork released, there's now no one between Starmer and the door. Very briefly.
No, there isn't. But honestly, I don't think it matters whether there are further revelations or not. I think Keir Starmer's fate is kind of sealed. I don't think he's going to be leading Labour into the next election. I think that was probably already true before the weekend of revelations. That doesn't mean that he will go in the next 2 or 3 weeks. It might take longer, but I think his fate is sealed when it comes to the next general election.
Sonia, thank you. Sorry to cut across. You're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much. Well, the downfall of Morgan McSweeney all stems from the Epstein files, with lawmakers in America still trying to get answers about how the rich and powerful acted and got away with large-scale child abuse. Tomorrow, Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's accomplice and the only person so far to be convicted of any criminal charges, is due to appear before a US congressional hearing into the scandal. She is, however, expected to plead the Fifth Amendment and stay silent in order not to incriminate herself. Just before we went on air, I spoke to Lisa Phillips, who survived several years of grooming and abuse by Jeffrey Epstein. And I began by asking her what she made of the way the UK has been investigating the scandal.
When you go through the files and you can clearly see what's going on and you guys connect the dots, you take care of it very quickly. Where in the United States, things get dragged out, we get gaslit, we get toyed with, and we don't get answers.
We're beginning, in a sense, to demand accountability, aren't we? It has, in many ways, on both sides of the Atlantic, been way too slow, hasn't it?
Well, definitely in the US, it's been very slow and very confusing. We still don't have answers, and we still kind of don't know how this is going to play out.
Your own experience with Epstein showed what powerful men can get away with, didn't it?
Yeah, well, that's the whole reason why I spoke out in 2019 when Virginia Giuffre spoke out about, what was going on with these powerful men. And I remembered back to when I knew Epstein and what I saw, and I wanted to support her. And I wanted people to know they need to believe the survivors. They were there, and what they're saying is true. A lot of this information from survivors were well documented for the last 30 years.
And on an individual basis, as a young woman, you were, I think, 21 when he started abusing you. That grooming process is extremely damaging, isn't it? I read in an interview that you cried when he died, even though you hated him.
Well, that's always the part of the grooming process that people really need to understand, is that there's always a love or a giving or support or a mentorship that goes along with abuse. And it was only when he died where that weight was lifted off of my shoulders, where I could be like, okay, he's not here anymore. And I can finally examine what happened to me and think about it, talk to other survivors and start doing something about it. And when I started speaking out in 2020, I had no idea where we would be today. I had no idea that I would ever be speaking out on Capitol Hill or starting this whole survivor revolution to get accountability and answers.
But so sorry to cut across you, but that accountability, in a sense, you're still not close. Epstein taking his own life robbed you of accountability from him, but there are others that you think must take accountability.
Accountability is so important here because it's not just Ghislaine and Jeffrey. This is many other people that need to be held accountable. And that's why the Congress passed the Transparency Act.
I mean, you mentioned Ghislaine Maxwell, his accomplice there. She is due to appear before the congressional investigation tomorrow, but she is expected to say nothing.
Of course. I mean, why? I don't know what her angle could be to disclose a whole bunch of names and things that people want to know, and then I feel like she's going to have a target on her back.
But that idea that she won't even give the victims and survivors the truth, how do you feel about that?
No, of course not. She was never for us, and she never will be. She's only about protecting herself and other powerful people, her friends.
Would you like to see a renewed focus on Andrew, formerly known as Prince Andrew? You allege that you met him with Epstein. You allege that Epstein instructed a woman to have sex with him. Obviously, allegations Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has always denied. But should there be more intense focus on him? Of course, there's been no investigation, despite allegations made about his links to Epstein and potential victims here in the UK.
When Virginia spoke out, it was about him. So I supported what she said because of what I knew. And he should come to the United States and testify because he was there. And according to Jeffrey, he had more of a hunger and desire for, young women than he did, his words.
And as you say, you've spoken about the speed, the slowness of all of this, but that accountability, everything coming into the light, as you say, are you confident in the end it will happen?
No, I'm not confident in the end 100% of everything will come out and it'll happen now, but I do hope so. And that's what we are working towards.
Lisa Phillips, thank you so much for talking to us.